compare two engines. One is a 260 horsepower diesel and one is a gas engine with 400 horsepower. Which one do you think can pull way better? It's the diesel, right? Because it comes down to torque, and more importantly, where that torque happens. Today we're breaking down torque curves, and we're also clearing up two terms that confuse almost everyone: nominal torque and peak torque. We'll also use a real-world engine you see everywhere, the Cummins ISB 6.7, as an example. By the end of this video, you'll understand what torque curves really show, why diesels feel strong at low RPM, and the difference between nominal and peak torque, and how Cummins designs the ISB to live in the real world, not just a sales brochure. But let's simply start with what torque is. Torque is a twisting force applied to the crankshaft. In engine terms, torque is how hard the engine twists, while horsepower is how fast it can keep twisting. Now let's understand this a little bit better by looking at two different ratchets. We have a longer ratchet here, which can give us a lot higher torque or turning power, and we have a little short breaker bar right here. It has less torque, but it has a lot more speed going around when it's in operation. Our diesel engines are designed to twist hard at low RPM, like this larger ratchet, and that's the foundation for everything else in this video. Because you see, a torque curve shows how much torque the engine makes across the RPM range. RPM in this graph is on the bottom, and torque is on the side. The shape of the curve often matters more than the peak number, because this shape tells you where the engine works best, how it drives, and how it should be geared. Let's compare gas to diesel engine torque curves quickly. As you can see from these examples, gas engines make torque high and narrow, while diesel engines make torque low and wide. But why is that? It's a combination of long stroke, high compression, turbocharging, and a heavy rotating mass, along with efficient combustion at low RPM. That's why diesels don't rev high, they pull. Now, the Cummins ISB 6.7 is a medium-duty workhorse. Typical ratings for the 6.7 liter are torque between 520 to 800 foot-pounds, peak torque RPM, somewhere between 1600 and 1800 RPM, horsepower, anywhere between 200 and 360 horsepower. But this is where we need to slow down, because this is also where nominal versus peak torque comes in. Peak torque is the highest possible torque number the engine can produce, and it happens at a specific RPM, and it's often used mostly for marketing. This torque value cannot be sustained all the time. Now for an ISB 6.7, peak torque might be 660 foot-pounds, or 750 foot-pounds, or maybe even 800, depending on the calibration. But peak torque is momentary, not something you'll be using under regular working conditions. Nominal torque, on the other hand, is the torque that the engine is designed to make continuously during normal operation. This is the torque level that the engine can hold for long periods, and it can be consistently delivered safely. It can also be produced without overheating, and it's designed to be maintained without damaging components. Nominal torque is what the engine lives at. If you remember peak torque as being what the engine can do, while nominal torque is what the engine is built to do, you'll be in good shape. But imagine you're pulling a load up a grade for 20 minutes. You're not at peak torque, you're at nominal torque. This is the torque value that fleets care about, engineers design for, transmissions are matched to, and cooling systems are sized for. That's why a truck can feel strong even when it's not hitting the advertised peak torque number. Looking at this example torque curve, it has been designed with a wide nominal torque band. It delivers strong starting from around 1300 RPM and remains fairly flat through 2100 RPM. Peak torque sits somewhere in the middle of that range. Now this provides smooth acceleration, fewer downshifts, stable exhaust temperatures, and long engine life. But engine manufacturers like Cummins also intentionally limit peak torque duration to protect things such as pistons, rods, head gaskets, and driveline components. It's not weakness, it's just well-designed engineering. This type of flat nominal torque curve explains why drivers might report that a vehicle pulls really well and it doesn't need to rev really high. They're feeling that nominal torque over a decent RPM range, not peak torque at a very small or narrow RPM range. Now let's say you get a new vehicle on your fleet that you aren't familiar with that feels a little bit weak compared to what you're used to. Keeping this torque curve in mind, you may be able to see if it is failing to reach nominal torque in whatever application you're using that vehicle for. Is the torque delayed? Is the flat section shrinking compared to what you're used to? Some common causes of power loss, which of course affect the real-life torque curve, are boost leaks, EGR flow problems, fuel pressure issues, after-treatment restrictions, or some sensor-based derates. No codes doesn't necessarily mean no problem, as the torque curve tells the whole story. Let's bring horsepower into the mix here quickly. I have another video specifically on horsepower, which I will link at the end of this video. Horsepower equals torque times RPM divided by 5,252. At 1600 RPM and 750 foot-pounds, that's going to end up being 228 horsepower. That's why diesels can feel strong even at lower horsepower numbers. Torque is high at low RPM, and horsepower climbs as RPM increases. And since this work mostly happens in the approximate 1600 to 2000 RPM range, horsepower won't actually be a super high number. But work happens in this torque range, and that's what diesels are simply designed for. So while peak torque may make the headlines, nominal torque is actually what does the work that the engine's designed for. But if you're curious to learn about how horsepower works alongside torque, watch this video next to learn all about it.